Welcome to the Bandwich Tapes. I'm Brad Williams. On this episode, I'm joined by pianist, composer, producer, and sound designer Dave Mackay. Dave has built a fascinating career that moves fluidly between his own deeply creative solo work and the world of major touring artists, including Brandi Carlile. He's also known for his distinctive approach to keyboards, synthesis, and sonic texture, whether on his three trilogy, LA, Nashville, and Utopia, or on albums like The Looking Chamber. In this conversation, we talk about the realities of touring, the challenge of finding your own musical voice, the overlap between sound design and composition, and why live music still works best when great musicians are really listening to each other. This was a thoughtful and deeply musical conversation, and I'm really glad to share it with you. Here's my conversation with Dave Mackay. As we're recording this, I think you just finished a tour. Is that right? How long were you on the road?
I did, yeah. I've been home. I've been home a couple of weeks now. I mean, this last run was maybe 3 or 4 weeks, but honestly, the last few years it's been tour after tour after tour. I've kind of been going since COVID, honestly, with sort of different projects out on the road, and this is the longest I've been home for a while. And you kind of caught me in a really sort of reflective. I've not had space to kind of take it all in this whole time, and now I'm getting time to do that. I'm sort of just reflecting on it all and taking it in and thinking about where I've been and what I've been doing, which has been nice to have a bit of time to do that.
If you were to kind of walk me through some of the things that you've kind of taken away from that experience, how are you feeling right now about all that? Because I know it, the highs and the lows of playing to massive audiences to then having quiet time has to be quite a big shift in your schedule.
We're not human beings aren't designed for it. Honestly, it's such an unnatural thing to do. Like the constant jet lag and time zone changing, the strange schedule. You're never eating and sleeping at the right times when your body wants to. And beyond that, just like getting in front of 5, 10, 20,000 people is not, it's a really unnatural thing to do. I think about it all the time because when you're in it and when you've done it for a while, it becomes sort of second nature and you're not thinking about it. But then it's when I get off tour and like after this run that I just did, I probably slept 12 hours a night for maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I couldn't really figure out why. I was like, surely I'm not that tired, but I think it was just my body was assimilating all the experiences and finally resting after a long time. All this said, I'm so grateful to do it. It's not. I don't want to sound like I'm complaining. I think it's a complex job, and I don't even like calling it a job. It's a complex way of life. And I find when I speak to other people who tour, it's almost like there's this shared understanding. We don't have to say anything. We'll both understand what those experiences are. It's often hard to put into words how strange it can feel. Yeah.
Do you still, through all of those experiences, do you experience deal with some of the nerves, some of the anxiety, some of the pieces that may go along with maybe less experience in that realm. Do you still have those moments from time to time where you get the butterflies before you walk out to play for a 20,000 filled room?
I think if I'm playing my own music, yes. If I have to talk on a mic, yes. If I'm just playing piano, no, not at all. It really yeah, I think a few years ago I started doing sort of bigger shows, and each time I do like a bigger theater or a bigger arena or a stadium or something, the first time I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then after doing it 2 or 3 times, it began feeling normal. I think it's remarkable how quickly you sort of acclimatize to what you're doing. But I recently had to do a best man speech for my friend's wedding, and I was nervous for months. So it's just funny how that works. It's like you'd think I'd be used to being in front of a crowd, but it was such a different thing. I think because speaking, there's no one can misinterpret. Well, people can, but it's harder to misinterpret what you're saying, whereas music is abstract, so it doesn't feel, the stakes are lower.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, I think I would much rather stand on stage playing with someone than have to explain what I'm doing on the microphone,
Yeah, yeah,
or just talk about it. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a muscle that I think instrumentalists don't, get to develop as much. And yeah, it's so it can be such a daunting thing to actually have to stand there and speak in front of people. And, and I know people that are just, I know one guy that immediately comes to mind that is like one of the greatest public speakers I've ever met. And you could give him a topic right now and say, could you go up and talk about this for 10 minutes to give me some time? And he could just walk up there and start talking. Some
Yeah.
people are just built with that.
Yeah.
Myself, not so much.
No, me neither. Even in like a group, if I'm with a group of friends at a pub or something, like when the attention's on me and I'm speaking and everyone's listening, even that feels like, whoa, the attention's on me in a way that it doesn't when I'm playing an instrument. I think it's just the language that I've feel most comfortable with is through an instrument.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. So I've been trying to remember how I first learned about you, about your music, and it could have been YouTube. It could have been that that wonderful algorithm that we all seem to get that sends music our way. But I first heard your music and saw your name through the 3-volume EP set that you did, the 3 albums,
Yeah,
LA, Nashville, Utopia,
yeah.
and still just listen to them all the time. My son was just in town visiting. He lives in Austin, and he's the same way. We were both talking about how much we love those albums, just sonically and compositionally, and the way you executed those tracks. Just such a
Thank
fan of
you.
them.
Oh
Yeah.
man, thank you so much. It's so refreshing to, like, I was wondering when you wrote to me, I was like, I wonder how you found me. And it's so refreshing to hear that like the the algorithm or whatever has actually delivered what the thing I care about, which is my own music, and you found me through that. That's really refreshing because on this end of it, it's like you put it out and you feel like you can't trust that it's actually going to reach anyone. That's the nature of the internet.
was one of those things that I started listening to it and I just couldn't stop, and
Mm,
it's funny. And I don't know if this is, you're this way with, home stereos or your car or your personal listening devices, but you kind of have these go-to albums that you kind of judge the way that things sound. And
mm.
the Los Angeles EP is kind of become my go-to of if I want to demo something, demo speakers or demo whatever I'm listening to. That's the album that I'm listening to now to judge
Wow.
everything else. So
No
yeah, it's a
way.
really,
Thank you, man.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
it's
I'm gonna
really.
have to pass that on to Jesse, who mixed it. He'd love to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really wonderful. When the drums come in on the first track, man,
Hmm.
it's beautiful stuff.
Mm,
What I'd love to hear as we're talking about those kind of, and I think they were released in every 2 years, right? Starting in
mm,
2018.
mhm.
What was the origin behind those three projects and the naming of them and just kind of how that all happened?
Yeah. It's funny the way they came out. None of it was the plan. Um, yeah, none of it has been the plan. I grew up listening to this band EST. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Esbjorn Svensson trio. Amazing Swedish piano trio that a friend showed me when I was 13, 14. And their music, I mean, I think it's his writing, really is like the biggest influence on my playing and approach to instrumental music. He's such a melodic writer. Um, and at the time, no one was really exploring um, interesting sonic stuff in the context of a piano trio. It would be piano, upright bass, and drums. And these guys came along and were putting the bass through effects pedals and doing prepared piano stuff, um, even putting the piano through distortion pedals, that kind of thing. So I really took to it as a teenager. And then when I started making my own music, I'd never done that specific format. I'd never actually got around to doing the trio thing. And um, this sort of it just came about as it's with my friends Antoine Katz, Aaron Steele. We've all known each other a long time and kind of met through. I met Antoine in college and then met Aaron through just touring with other people. Um, and the idea was that we would do three records, three tracks each in three different cities. And it's called three because it's like exploring what's possible as a trio. Um, and just sort of taking that idea of piano, what a piano trio is, a jazz piano trio, but how does it work if we use um like the second record, we used a bunch of cassette loops, which is kind of more practice in like electronic music making, or there's a lot of things where I'm doing synths on it, sort of more production approaches than just the traditional jazz trio where you would throw up mics and record a live take. But it's all sort of born from improvising together. So the first record, the LA one, we went to my friend Pete's studio and tracked all the basics. Um, so drums, bass, and I think I was on a Nord, so Rhodes or Whirly stuff, and then I took it back and layered more on it afterwards. Um, and then the day after that, Aaron moved to Nashville. So the next thing we did is we flew to Nashville to make the second record in Nashville at Aaron's house, and then the third was supposed to be in London, but then COVID happened. So instead, we recorded it over Zoom um, during lockdown, and it's called Utopia because I think we mostly know the word utopia to mean sort of like a paradise, but it also means I think it just means any place or every place. There's a different meaning of it that I took, so that's why it's named Utopia. Um, but yeah, it did end up being three completely different creative approaches, and I think three different sounding records. But yeah, I'm very proud of.
Yeah, I'm such a fan of them and the playing, just the interplay
Mm,
between the three of you. Yeah, it's really, really wonderful. Just a tight yet expressive trio that, yeah, it's just
mm.
really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
everyone has such a distinct voice on their instrument. And some of it is born out of, there's this, it used to be a jazz bar in Highland Park in LA called ETA. And there was sort of a scene there when I lived in LA of improvised music. Every Monday there'd be a different trio or quartet, um, doing an hour, 2 hours of completely free improvised music. And we as a trio did a couple there. It's sort of born out of that world of not really, not being too prepared in the composing of it, but we just improvise, hit record, listen back, refine it, improvise again. That's kind of the approach we took, which I think means everyone has space for their own musical voice to be heard on it.
Yeah, it's really nice. So where you were talking about, hearing this trio when you were younger,
Mm,
how old were you when you started playing, and kind of what were you interested in playing kind of from the beginning?
mm. I was probably 5. I had all sorts of music toys, little toy keyboard, toy percussion instruments. It's all I wanted to do. Um, so yeah, I think my parents would say it was very clear from day one that that's what I was going to end up doing. And there's no other musicians in my family. It was I definitely stood out in that regard. Um, as being different. And yeah, they bought me piano lessons as a 6th birthday present, with a local teacher. And after the first lesson, she was like, "He's picking this up really quickly." So yeah, it just sitting at the piano and improvising. I actually found a video recently. It's me when I was maybe 6 or 7, and my piano teacher had just done a like an end of year. It was like a Christmas concert for all the students to play what they'd been working on, and all the parents come and watch. And the teacher played Fur Elise at the end of it. And I've had maybe a year of piano lessons, 6 months of piano lessons or something. And there's this video, on like a camcorder. This is in the 90s, and everyone's gone home, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out how to play Fur Elise, and all I can play is the first da, 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 da. That's all I know. But I keep doing it and then improvising what I want to happen next, and then I'll get bored and start again. And it's kind of funny to watch because I'm just so absorbed by the piano, um, and with this intention of figuring it out. But then also, when I can't figure out, it's fine. I just make it my own version. So I think I was always drawn to improvising, and then naturally that sort of led to being interested in jazz. And then, oh, I'm rambling. What was your question?
Yeah, I was just,
Reflecting.
I'm just thinking about the way it started. I was reading
Yeah,
in your bio. I think you studied music in London, right? And
in
then
London. Yeah, yeah.
came to the U.S., right? And then went to Berklee as well.
Yeah. So when I was maybe 11 or 12, my parents are really, they're not musicians, but they really nurtured me, and were just trying to find the way to help me get better, and nurture my interest in it. So they asked the school music teacher what he would recommend, and he said, "Well, there's these music colleges in London. There's one in Manchester as well that do Saturday schools." Um, so you drive down on a Saturday. I grew up 100 miles from London, so we drive down on a Saturday and do a full day of lessons. It would be piano lessons, choir, music theory, piano duo, like sight reading, two piano music, all sorts, orchestra, all day long, just on a Saturday. So I wound up doing that from when I was 12 to 18, in London. So my parents would drive me down every Saturday. I'd have normal school during the week. And I just had the most amazing piano teacher, who her speciality is like contemporary classical music. Um, I don't know that she had any interest in jazz or could improvise or anything like that, but she understood that that's what I needed. And yeah, she taught me how to listen. She taught me how to play. And we'd find these ways of, there'd be like the college would have, every semester there'd be a music competition. And, it's a normal thing to enter in and play a piece of, Prokofiev or Chopin or whatever. And she would say, okay, you're going to do one Prokofiev, you're going to do one Chopin, and then you're going to play a piece of your own. Write your own piece and improvise and play it. And no other kids, it was like a fully classical course. No other kids were doing that. And I never won any of the competitions, but it didn't matter. It was my teacher was just encouraging that voice. And when I think back on it, it's like, I was so lucky to have had a teacher who, like in 6 years of lessons, I never heard her play the piano. She would instruct me and I would play. It's so common, I think, for music teachers to sort of impose their own voice or their own desires when they're teaching. And I was so lucky to have a teacher who was, all she was interested in is helping me develop my voice. What do I want to say? So yeah, I did that till I was 18 and then moved to Boston for college. I went to Berklee. And so began my transatlantic life since then.
How was the experience? I've spoken to so many musicians on here about attending Berklee. Some are teaching there now. So, just such a important place, I think, for developing musicians and just not just the coursework or the ensembles, but just building those connections and colleagues that you may carry throughout your career. How was that experience for you now as you look back at it?
Yeah, it's exactly as you describe. I think the real value of going to somewhere like that is it's not necessarily the classes you're attending or the projects you're doing. It's the people who are all there with a shared interest. And many of my Berklee friends are like my closest friends now, however many years later. We're still making music together. We live all over the world now, but nothing could replace that for me. And for me also, it was, it was a big culture shock thing, moving countries. I was very homesick. I didn't like it at first. I almost quit. And I had a friend there at Berklee who convinced me to stay, and I'm really glad he did. So yeah, it was a challenging few years for me, just moving. I kind of look back on it and I'm like, I can't believe I moved countries at 18 and I just showed up with a suitcase and an address of my dorm, and that was it. I didn't know anyone. So yeah, great experience overall.
Yeah. I did music school in Nashville a long time ago, and yeah, I'm right. I'm there with you on that. Just the relationship piece of that, and understanding how to collaborate with people and how to be a team player in an ensemble and work together. I think that's what sets you up for success of being a professional musician, is understanding the give and take of working with other people. That, being in a place like that, I think is so important to understand that.
Yeah. If I could go back, I wish I'd played more. I actually did a writing and production degree because for some reason I thought that would be more more useful. And I don't know that it was. I think the thing the best things I remember were like the recording studio class or whatever, or there's a Paul Simon Sting ensemble, and you made friends through playing, not through sitting and being told how a compressor works or whatever.
you playing a lot in Boston while you were a student?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, because of the way student visas are set up, you can't work while you're a student. So anytime people were starting to do, actual paying gigs or anything, I could never do that. Um, so I kind of, I was playing around the college and playing, with people outside of it, and starting to write my own music and put together my own band. But it kind of really got busy for me after college, I think, playing and gigging when I moved to New York.
Who all were you? How was the experience living in New York? How long were you there after Berklee?
4 years. So yeah, Boston for 4, and then New York for 4, and then LA for 4, and now London. I've got a thing going on every 4 years. I upend my life and go somewhere else, and I'm at 4 years now in London, so I don't know what's next. Yeah, New York, changed me completely. I think once you've lived there, you navigate people differently. Um, it changes your priorities. There's so much that doesn't matter when you're just trying to get by and exist in New York. And you see so many different types of people and interact with so many different types of people. So I think it just changes you. You become. I've become a much more direct person, I think, since living there, because you have to be. Um, but that said, I burnt out on it after a while. Yeah, I could never live there again. I don't think. I enjoyed it at the time, but it's not for me, not my city.
Yeah, I've heard people say that. I've heard that,
Yeah,
and it's just the pace and just the especially for musicians, just the logistics of getting from point A to point B with gear and all of
yeah,
that can really be tough.
yeah. No, I remember, several times getting on a subway with like two keyboards in flight cases and a keyboard stand and something else, a box of cables. I'm like, because I didn't want to pay for a cab, because it was too expensive to get the cab. And it was I just look back on it, and yeah, it's only to be done in your 20s. I think it's like I couldn't do it now. But
Yeah.
it did lead to my first touring experiences, and I look back on it, I can sort of trace how everything came from my time there. So I am grateful for it. Um, yeah, I look back on it fondly.
Do you feel like your pace of life now is much more manageable than it was living in the States? Do you find that you have more margin to just kind of maybe step back and take a pause from music now that you're living back in London?
Um, well, I live here, but I'm very rarely here. I'm on tour so much or
Yeah,
traveling.
that's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like last year, I think I was only here maybe 3 months of the year. Um, and honestly, like all these places, that they all feel like home. I think sometimes when people ask me where I live, I'm like, I don't really know. I'm wherever I am today is where I live, because yeah, London. My stuff is in London, but um, a big part of my community and friends are in LA and New York. So anytime I land in any of these places, it's like I know my way around. It all feels like home. I've got my coffee shop, my whatever grocery store in each place. Um, but I do think pace of life. Since leaving New York, I can relax in these other cities. I think with New York, it's like I'd go on tour, get off tour, and try and unwind, and you just can't. There's no space for that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I can't even imagine that.
Yeah,
Um I know that you've done a lot and have a relationship working with Nord keyboards. How did that
yeah.
relationship come about, and how long have you kind of been working with them on some of your own sounds and kind of sonic landscapes?
Yeah, how did that come about? I think when I started touring properly, on sort of bigger shows, I just wrote to the distributor and asked if I could endorse them. And the way Nord, I don't know if this is still how they do it, but they sort of have they're based in Sweden, in Stockholm, but they have different distributors in each country. So at that point, I was just talking to the folks in America. Um, And then I think it was actually in lockdown. You know, Nord is, to me, it's like the perfect instrument for what I want to do. I have used other keyboards in the past on tours, and yeah, it does 98% of what I ever need to do. So I felt very sort of aligned with their mission as a instrument maker, because a lot of keyboards have tons of menus and tons of options and and their whole thing is playability, and not overcomplicating the instrument so that you're never menu diving for anything. It's all a one button press away. So I just wrote to them and filmed these videos, and I think they were doing a series of sort of lockdown videos, and they liked those, and sort of off of that I met anytime I'd go through Stockholm, I'd write to them and then go meet them at the factory, and they're great. I love the Nord guys.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How much does the music inspire the sound choices versus how much does your sound inspire the music? Does that make sense? Like because I know having a new sound, a new piece of gear, finding a new thing can really be such a creative spark for music. I'd love to hear kind of that dual direction and how you navigate those two.
Yeah, I think I went quite deep on the sound design thing, and started not collecting, but I've far too many synths upstairs now and keyboards and all sorts. And part of that was I'd showed up for a session in a studio somewhere, and whatever they had to hand, I think it was maybe a Korg MS-20 and something else, I wasn't familiar with. And in the context of trying to come up with ideas, I sort of said to myself, I'd love to know how to get whatever sounds are in my head from any instrument that's put in front of me. So I sort of went down this synth rabbit hole of like, how does a Moog sound? How does a ARP 2600 sound? How does an MS-20 sound? They all make a bass sound, but why would you choose one over the other? And that sort of led to, just me really exploring sound design, in the context of making music. So that I kind of go back and forth between the two. I'll spend, often now, if I buy a new instrument, I'll spend time just making my own sounds. And then when I come to writing, I'm not flicking through someone else's presets. I'm flicking through my own, and I can remember making them. And it's that way. It's like any of the sounds I'm choosing from are already to my taste. So I think it's sort of a back and forth. I definitely burn out on the sound designing thing. If I do too much of it, you begin thinking like, okay, how many different pads can I make? Like, how many variations of this sound exist? So I have to sort of go back and forth. But I have found, like, I have this set of patches I made for the Prophet Rev 2, and that synth I have in most settings. That's the one I would ask for, because it can do such a wide range of things, and it's meant that I sort of have this library of sounds in my head where I'm like, oh, we need something kind of like an organ, but not like an organ. And I'm like, okay, it's that patch. So they're kind of, those sounds are all over the 3 records, all over, anything I'm recording on. I'm kind of pulling from this bank of sounds that I've sat and made myself.
I love those, um, the sounds that you choose to, develop and use. And yeah, it's, they sound very fresh to me.
Mm,
Something that's, it's certainly reminiscent of sounds that we're all familiar with, but it kind of has this
mm.
fresh voice to it, which I really appreciate.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm also a big fan of the the full album, The Looking Chamber, that
Mm.
you released. And I was reading about that I believe was that the first solo project that you did working with someone producing it that was not you?
Yes,
Is that correct?
that is correct.
Was that, did you feel a sense of freedom with that? Did you feel a different sense of responsibility with that? How has that experience not being the producer changed the way you were able to approach it artistically?
That record is it's out on Colourfield Records, which is a label my friend Pete has started, Pete Min, and he has a concept behind how these records get made. So the idea is that you go in the session with nothing planned, and Pete has this amazing studio in LA with this collection of instruments. It's sort of all the synths I've read about but thought I'll never play. He's kind of got one of each. So the idea is, he puts a memory Moog or a CS60 or whatever in front of you, and you sit and play and find ideas, and he's recording the whole time, and then you find you're writing the songs through this process of improvising on these instruments that you have no idea how to use. Um, and that process, I think, a really interesting. I really like the record, and I think something really interesting came from it. But it was not a comfortable process for me, given what I just said, which is like, when I get a new instrument, I want to know how it works and make my own sounds and draw from that. And Pete's whole thing is like, don't think, don't get stuck. Just whatever comes out first, that's what we're going to run with. And I see how that, it's a way of working that does get you to a place quickly. I found it so frustrating. I was like, I just want to sit and like tinker for a minute and find something, because I'm looking at these controls in front of me and I know what they do, and I kind of, it's not my first time using a synth, but it might be my first time using this synth. So I want to get in there and find what it can do, and not just run with the first thing that comes out of it. But that's his whole process. So there was a lot of relinquishing control, and I think that was, ultimately a good lesson to learn and a good process to go through. It might not be my way of making my next record, though, because it was so
Mhm.
frustrating.
Yeah. How I guess coming through that experience, how did how did that change your approach to, um, being maybe in someone's band? I mean, like, do you, do you did it force you to work quicker? Like, if you're working with someone that's wanting you to dial up different sounds, maybe for a particular track, did it change that
Mm.
approach to it?
Not really. I think this thing happens often if I'm in a session or in a rehearsal and I'm playing a synth, and someone, whoever I'm working for might ask for a certain kind of sound. And often, it's often not like obvious that the sounds don't just exist, like you have to make them, and that takes time to make.
Yeah.
Um, so again, this is sort of why I have this bank of sounds that I've made, because I can get somewhere familiar quickly, and then I can tweak from there. But the last thing I want is like in a rehearsal or in a sound check where, someone asks for a sound and then I'm there like dialing in filters and stuff with the whole band waiting. It's like, I can't, I can't do that. So I think, I'm quite picky about the sounds I use. Yeah, I don't use other people's presets at all. And it's not because I don't think they're good. I think it's just I want my sounds to be my own. I want it to be something that I've invested time in, and again, that I've made to my own taste. So yeah, I think that's still I still lean on that of knowing the instrument in front of me and having something in there that I can start from, and then if I need to change it, it's a quicker process than starting from scratch.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And yeah, I would imagine, just as we all as musicians, um, and I just think, guitar players, singers, I mean, your tone, it's your voice, and it's so much of your identity. And I
Mm.
would imagine that in your world of sense and different sounds, I mean, there's so much of your own musical identity that's attached to that. And I think
Mm.
there's I think that's important, and I think, yeah, to me, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Well, and also as you're saying that, I'm thinking of like when you play a piano, you have no choice. Like you show up to the gig and the piano is the piano. And in your sound is in your fingers, but at the end of the day, you have no control over that instrument. So I think part of it is here's a lane of music making where I do get to choose what the sound is, so that I
Yeah.
think there's a freedom in that. Because that's part of being a piano player is you have to make whatever instrument sound good, even if
Yeah,
it's a bad piano.
absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the funny things that happened as I was, reading about you and learning more about you is that I'm, listening to these albums and I'm such a fan, and then I start doing a deep dive to then learn that you've been touring with Brandy Carlisle for a
Hmm.
while,
Hmm.
and which I was like, oh wow, so there's this, here's this guy doing this thing, but also doing this thing, which is amazing to me.
Mm.
Um, how did that relationship happen? Were you still were you in LA when you started working with her?
I was No, where was I? I think I just moved to London, and but I was flying back and forth to LA. I kind of didn't want to leave LA. I left in the middle of COVID. Uh, just the travel restrictions at the time, because I was just on a visa. Not I don't have a like citizenship or green card or anything. It just meant that it was not easy for me to move around. So I made this decision to move back to the UK and sort of be closer to family for that period of time, with the intention of whenever this is all done, I'll move back to LA. And it didn't go as planned. I ended up moving to London, and then things started opening up, and I was like, okay, well, I'll just go back and forth. So I'd fly out to LA and see friends, and it's almost like I wouldn't even tell people, but I'd fly out there, and then people would start calling me as if they knew I was there, even though I hadn't said anything. So there's definitely a synchronicity in LA that happens like that. And I happened to be there. My friend was working with a band called Lucius, and they were just finished a new record and making the live version of it, and needed someone to build their playback rig, basically. So they wanted to do everyone on a synth, and the two front women wanted to have keytars where they could play, wireless keytars, it's like an 80s record where they could play synth sounds from the keytars and walk around stage. And I spent a lot of time in Ableton, and I've sort of engineering brain as well, like music engineering brain. So my friend was like, "Can you help build this playback thing?" So I was doing that, and then they wanted to go on tour without a playback engineer, so I had to build this setup to be very sort of user friendly, and color code all the wires, like you plug this in here, plug this in here, and set up the Ableton session so they could just run the show and and have it be foolproof. And the first gig they were doing was at Brandy. Brandy does a festival in Mexico every January called Girls Just Want a Weekend. And that's the first show Lucius were doing with this new setup. So they were like, "Can you just come with us for the first show and make sure everything runs properly?" And so I went with them. And the day before I flew to Mexico, they called me and said, "Brandy needs a synth player for." So that the last day of the festival, she does a show called Ladies of the 80s, and it's, everyone who's performed at the festival gets up and sings a 80s power ballad or cover song, whatever. And they didn't have a synth player for it, which is, I don't know how they got that far without a synth player for the 80s thing. So I was like, yeah, I'm your guy. That's my thing. So sort of overnight, learned all the music and programmed all the sounds. And because I'm so particular about synth sounds, it was, I spent a lot of time trying to get things as close to the originals as I could. And then, did that show with them, and we had a great time. It was really fun. Lots of tequila. And then that's kind of where it started. So she called me back the following year to do Mexico again. And then we started touring together properly. I think that would have been 2022. So it's been about 4 years now.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
What a fun way to start playing with someone too.
I know. And I feel like she saw me at my true self as well. Like playing 80s power ballads is like very, very deeply in my sensibility.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is your approach, and I think playing synths and playing in a band, I just think about, bass guitar, electric guitar, keyboard, just everyone residing in the same sonic frequency regions and not stepping on each other.
Yeah.
Do you spend a lot of time when you building those sounds to make sure that you are complimenting the people around you, but not getting in their way? How much of that is sound versus the way you approach voicing chords, voicing your parts? How do you navigate those worlds?
Are you talking about the 80s thing or just in general?
I'm just in general. Whether playing in bands with other players.
For me, sort of going back to a moment ago, we're talking about sort of that I mostly self-produce. I also self-mix a lot, and those processes are all intertwined for me. Like mixing, arranging, sound design, playing are all the same thing. I actually find the idea. There's only a few times where someone else has mixed my music, because I feel like they're all the same thing, which is it's all composing. It's all like finding a piece of a puzzle that fits. And I think that is sound design. It is the voicings. It is the mix. So and when you're playing live, you have to give up control over the mix. You're trusting that whoever's out front is making it sound the way you're hearing it in your ears, which is also, maybe different to the other people in the band, because everyone might be on in-ears and have a different mix. I actually find like the whole, playing with in-ears, I find it, if I think about it, I'm like, it's a strange thing. I get why we all use them, but it's a strange thing to create your own reality in your own ears, which is different to everyone you're playing with, and it's different to everyone in the room who's watching you. So I think there's just you have to let go and trust. And sometimes I'll hear something back and it's like, that's not how I intended it at all, the way that is sitting in the mix, but you have no control over it. So all you can really do is approach it with what you're hearing. And that is the sound. It is the voicing. It is how loud you play it. How you enter and exit a phrase that you're playing. It's all those things, I think.
Yeah. I remember telling someone, I think someone could probably write a book about the psychology of monitor mixes and what it says about the person based on what they may want to hear in their ears or what they may not want to hear. But I agree with you. And I get it, for so many reasons why musicians use in-ears, but it can feel it is a very strange and kind of possibly even isolating experience.
Yeah. I mean, especially
Yeah.
if you add in like I'm a big I want to start a revolution that we all stop playing to click and track, because I think it just changes. There's this a weird thing that's happened where everyone started assuming that is the right way to do a tour or to play a show. Like the right thing to do is to have a click track. And I don't know why why everyone has assumed that's better than. It's like, yeah, it's more consistent, but does consistent equal better art? Not necessarily. It's just it's there's a value judgment there on like it being consistent from night to night. I'm so grateful that no one I've toured with in the last 5 years uses click or track. So I just think it changes how you listen. It changes how you play when you're listening to a click track. In addition to what we were just talking about, where your mix is different to everyone else's, it's like this idea of creating your own reality, I find really strange.
I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, with tracks and you have vocal cues and the whole deal. Yeah,
Oh, I
it
can't do
just
it.
takes me totally out of the experience. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is,
Yeah.
like with Brandy, we were just doing arenas, and because a lot of people argue that the reason for everything to be on track is that, well, the lighting people need time code, or the video people need da da da. And it's like, no, they don't. We did this. Bands toured successfully for many years without this, and they still can. Brandy's out there doing arenas with a full lighting video thing happening, and none of it is to click. And it also frees up, like, she can talk as long as she wants between songs. We can change something in the middle of a song and not be beholden to someone pressing play on a thing. And I think most musicians want it. That's the weird thing. Is like most musicians want to not be on a click track, is what I mean. I just think
Yeah.
it's like anyone I talk to agrees. So I'm like, well, why are we all doing it?
Especially when the stage is filled with world-class musicians that
right.
know how to communicate without cues and know how
how to
certainly
listen and how to feel.
listen.
Yeah, it's like it's all these things that music is. Like music is like energy, and I don't feel I want that to be flattened out by a metronome every night. Like I don't think I don't think anyone's tempos would fluctuate that much. And if they do, so what? Like, it's fun. That's that's what it should be about. Yeah.
And some, and I'm sure you and you probably have the same opinion. Some of my favorite albums that were recorded many years ago were not recorded with a click, and the music moves around a little bit. And that's I think that's one of the things that makes it so beautiful is feeling the energy in the track as it's happening.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So, well, Dave, I just can't thank you enough for hanging out and spending some time with me. I'm such a fan of your music, just your composing, the way you play, just how you collaborate with others. And I just can't thank you enough for the music and just spending some time with me today.
Oh, man, absolutely. It's such a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And just best of luck. And just thanks again. And hopefully see you on a show soon.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow or subscribe to the Bandwich Tapes wherever you listen, and consider leaving a rating or review. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.